The storm had rolled in quietly that night, the kind that didn't roar but whispered its warning through the darkened windows of the Wilcox estate. Inside, the glow of antique lamps painted the mahogany walls in shades of gold and regret. At the head of the table sat Richard Wilcox, founder, father, and a man who believed he could outsmart both time and betrayal. The documents before him were worth more than any treasure. A revised contract, his final decision, a silent declaration of trust and succession. Yet somewhere beyond that silence, betrayal had already taken root. He glanced up at the family portrait on the wall, his son Daniel, his daughter Claire, and beside them, his business partner and oldest friend, Michael Grant. They'd built their empire together over 30 years, brick by brick, secret by secret. Their company, Wilcox and Grant Industries, had become a pillar in New England construction. They were the men who built cities, or at least the illusion of permanence. What Richard didn't know that night was that permanence had already left the room. Michael's loyalty had cracked long before the ink dried. Greed, like rot, had crept in quietly. The sound of the rain against the windows faded into the tick of the old grandfather clock. The air felt thick, heavier with every second. Richard signed his name one last time, the pen dragging slightly as if resisting what came next. His estate, valued at nearly $10 million, was to be divided evenly among his children and his lifelong business partner, in gratitude for his years of loyalty. That clause, loyalty, would soon be exposed for what it really was. The next morning, Richard Wilcox was found dead in his study. The papers he'd signed were gone. The only clue left behind was an empty whiskey glass and a torn page from his legal will, the words "amendment pending" scrawled in the corner. Before we go deeper into the shadows of this betrayal, I'd like to know something from you. When trust and money collide, which do you believe survives? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious how you define loyalty when $10 million is on the line. And if you want to uncover how friendship turned fatal in this story, stay with me till the end, because every secret in this family will be exposed. Michael Grant had always been the kind of man who never left fingerprints, not literally but morally. Where Richard had ethics, Michael had adaptability. He wasn't born rich. He'd earned every inch of his success by learning when to shake a hand and when to let go of one. When the Wilcox empire began its rise in the early 1990s, Michael was there, charming investors, negotiating land deals, and handling the side of the business Richard never wanted to touch. People. To the Wilcox children, Michael was Uncle Mike, the man who brought Christmas gifts and spoke softly at funerals. But behind his measured smile was a ledger full of debts, both financial and personal. When the markets crashed in 2008, Michael nearly lost everything, except his access to Richard's trust. He started pulling small sums from shared accounts, framing them as operational transfers. Richard never noticed, or maybe he chose not to see. Some secrets are easier to bury when they come from the people you love. By 2018, the company was worth nearly $80 million. Richard had begun stepping back, letting Daniel and Claire take on minor roles while he prepared his succession plan. But as his health declined, so did his judgment. He leaned more on Michael than ever, trusting him with signatures, negotiations, and the management of liquid assets. Reports later suggested that in the months leading up to Richard's death, Michael had quietly shifted several contracts under his personal holding company. Offshore, invisible, legal on paper, criminal in intent. Witnesses recall seeing them together days before the tragedy, Richard and Michael in a tense meeting at the company's downtown office. An assistant later told investigators, "They weren't fighting, but you could tell something had changed. Mr. Wilcox looked betrayed." 2 nights before his death, Richard made a call to his lawyer, Arthur Penning. He requested an emergency amendment to his will, removing Michael Grant as a beneficiary and transferring full control of the company to his children. The meeting was set for Monday morning. He never made it. The official report listed Richard's death as heart failure, but those who knew him, truly knew him, questioned that conclusion. His glass of whiskey had been untouched, and the security system had been mysteriously disabled that night. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, just silence, a missing document, and a business partner who looked a little too calm at the funeral. Michael delivered the eulogy himself, his voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. He spoke of friendship, of brotherhood, of the kind of loyalty that outlasts death. Daniel and Claire stood beside him, too grief-stricken to see what was already unraveling behind the scenes. Within weeks, the amended will vanished. The official version, the one leaving a quarter of the estate to Michael, reappeared in its place. Handwritten notes, signed by Richard but undated, surfaced to confirm the arrangement. The lawyer, Arthur Penning, claimed the amendment meeting had never been scheduled. But phone logs later exposed the call. Someone had erased the calendar entry from his system. The Wilcox family didn't fight it. At least, not yet. Michael had been their father's partner. Almost family. They wanted to believe he was innocent. But grief often makes fools of the faithful. By spring, Daniel began noticing irregularities in the company's accounts. Dormant contracts reactivated, offshore transactions labeled under shell entities. One of them caught his attention. Wilcox Development Holdings Limited, a company name identical to theirs, but with a different registration address. A small office in Delaware. He brought it up to Michael, who brushed it off. Just an accounting subdivision, he'd said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But Daniel's instincts screamed otherwise. He started digging, quietly at first, late nights in the office, old records spread across his desk. Every discovery, another cut to the truth his father had died believing. Then one night he found it. A single signed authorization transferring company ownership, shares to a trust controlled solely by Michael Grant. The signature looked like his father's, but the date didn't match. It was signed 2 days after Richard's death. Daniel confronted Michael in his office the next morning. What began as a calm conversation escalated fast. Reports from a security guard who overheard the exchange recalled fragments. "You think I don't know what you did? Careful, son. You're stepping into something you don't understand." That night, Daniel's car was found abandoned on the side of Route 14, keys still in the ignition. He was missing for 2 days before he turned up at a friend's cabin, shaken, paranoid, saying someone had followed him. But he had evidence, flash drives, documents, and copies of forged signatures. He was ready to go public. What happened next would turn a quiet corporate betrayal into a national scandal. When Daniel Wilcox stepped into the small county sheriff's office the following Monday, he carried more than evidence. He carried the weight of a family name that had been bought and sold behind their backs. The detective assigned to the case, Captain Ellen Rourke, had seen her share of financial crimes, but this one was different. There was grief in the air, not greed. A son trying to prove that his father's best friend had stolen more than money. He had stolen trust. Rourke listened as Daniel laid out the timeline. Bank transfers, offshore ledgers, forged signatures. Every file pointed back to one man, Michael Grant. But Michael was careful. His paper trail was clean, and his connections ran deep. He knew how to make doubt look like coincidence. The detective started quietly, subpoenaing records from Wilcox and Grant Industries. Most came back sanitized, altered metadata, missing attachments, and emails mysteriously deleted. But forensic IT specialists recovered fragments from a backup server, enough to reveal a pattern. Every time Richard Wilcox authorized a financial move, an identical transaction, usually smaller, unnoticed, followed within 24 hours, rerouted to a trust under Michael's name. Over 14 years, those minor adjustments accumulated to more than $10 million. The scandal might have remained buried if not for a single email dated 2 weeks before Richard's death. It read, "We need to finalize the paperwork before he changes his mind. Make sure the documents are ready for signature, Monday latest." The sender's address was encrypted, but the metadata traced back to Michael's private laptop. When investigators confronted him, Michael laughed. "You think I'd risk 30 years of friendship for a few numbers on a screen? I love that man like a brother." His tone was calm, measured, but his eyes betrayed him. The story hit the local press before the investigation could even conclude. Headlines read, "Business Empire Under Investigation After Founder's Mysterious Death." Reporters camped outside the company's headquarters, filming every black sedan that pulled into the parking lot. For the first time, the empire that had built half the city looked like it might crumble under its own secrets. Inside, Claire Wilcox faced a different war. As CFO, she had to keep the business alive while defending her father's name. Employees whispered, investors hesitated, and clients began withdrawing contracts. The empire her father built on loyalty was bleeding trust by the hour. Meanwhile, Captain Rourke discovered something chilling. The night Richard died, the estate's power grid had been manually reset from the outside. Security footage was missing from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., a 2-hour blackout window. In its place was static, but digital recovery showed a flicker of movement, a shadow near the study door, tall, suited, and unmistakably familiar. Rourke didn't move too soon. She wanted one more link, something that tied Michael not just to theft, but to that night. It came in the form of a maintenance report from a private electrician hired weeks before the death. The signature approving the system override was Michael Grant's. Still, circumstantial evidence wasn't enough. The DA needed a confession or a direct connection to the missing will. Then came the twist no one saw coming. A retired paralegal named Sylvia Kent, who had once worked at Penning and Associates, reached out to Daniel. She claimed that 2 days before Richard's death, she had seen a man in the office late at night, shredding documents and reprinting legal forms. When she confronted him, he told her to forget what she'd seen. That man, she said, was Michael Grant. Her statement reignited the investigation. Within weeks, the FBI joined the case under financial crimes jurisdiction. They raided Michael's office and home, seizing hard drives and handwritten ledgers. Among them was a small black notebook, the kind used by contractors decades ago. Inside were cryptic notes, dates, and coded initials. But one line stood out. RW signed, delete amendment, secure originals. When confronted, Michael maintained his innocence. He told investigators that Richard had willingly signed over company rights as part of a restructuring plan. He was dying, Michael said during a recorded interview. He didn't want his kids fighting over money. I promised to protect them. But the truth was already cracking. Forensic handwriting analyst Assures determined the signature on the posthumous transfer was a digital overlay, a perfect scan from a document Richard had signed months earlier. It was the smoking gun. Michael Grant was arrested in May 2019 on charges of wire fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit estate tampering. The trial would last nearly a year, drawing national attention. The courtroom became a stage where greed, grief, and betrayal took turns under the spotlight. Daniel testified first. His voice trembled as he described the night he found the forged documents. He wasn't just my father's friend, Daniel said. He was family, and he knew exactly how to use that. Then Claire took the stand, calm, poised, but visibly broken. He gave my father comfort while he stole from him, she said. He stood at our table. He toasted to our success, and every time he smiled, he was calculating how to take it all. Michael's defense was ruthless. His attorneys argued that Richard had approved every transaction, that there was no proof of poisoning, no evidence of foul play in his death. And technically, they were right. Richard's autopsy showed no foreign substances, only stress, and a failing heart. But when the prosecution revealed the missing camera footage in the manipulated calendar entries, the jury began to see a different picture. It wasn't about murder, it was about intent, a betrayal so calculated that it left no fingerprints, only broken trust. After 4 months of deliberation, Michael Grant was found guilty on all major charges. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison, calling his actions a masterclass in moral bankruptcy. As he was led away, Michael turned to the Wilcox family and said quietly, "You think this makes you whole? You'll learn the hard way. Everyone in business lies." The courtroom fell silent, but even after justice was served, the damage lingered. The company dissolved within a year. Employees scattered, clients withdrew, and the Wilcox name, once synonymous with integrity, became a cautionary tale in business schools across the country. Daniel moved to Maine, where he started a small contracting firm of his own, refusing to use the family name. Claire, unable to face the city where it all happened, left for Chicago and never returned. And Michael Grant, according to prison records, spent most of his sentence in isolation, refusing interviews, never once admitting guilt. But his lawyer later revealed that he'd written dozens of unsent letters, all addressed to Richard Wilcox. Letters that began not with apology, but with justification. You would have done the same, one read. You just didn't have the courage to admit it. Years later, when Daniel was cleaning out an old storage unit, he found something unexpected, a sealed envelope addressed to him in his father's handwriting. Inside was a single page, dated a week before Richard's death. It read, "If you're reading this, it means I was too late to fix what I started. Don't let loyalty blind you. Some friends don't betray you out of hate. They do it because they think they deserve what you have. When that happens, the only thing left to do is let the truth be exposed." The words hit Daniel like a ghost whisper. In that moment, he realized his father had known, maybe not the how, but the who. He'd seen the betrayal coming. He just hadn't survived long enough to stop it. And maybe that was the real tragedy. Not that Michael Grant stole $10 million, but that he'd convinced himself it wasn't theft. It was justice. Sometimes the darkest betrayals don't happen in shadows. They happen under bright office lights, with contracts signed and hands shaken. They happen between people who once trusted each other to the end. And when they're finally exposed, what's left behind isn't money or property or power. It's silence, the kind that follows the sound of a friendship collapsing forever. Before we end tonight, I want to leave you with this. In a world driven by ambition, how much trust is too much? Would you risk everything for loyalty? Or would you walk away before it turns to betrayal? Tell me what you think below and share your thoughts about where true greed begins. And if stories like this one remind you that even the closest bonds can fracture under pressure, stay connected with us. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us as we continue uncovering the hidden betrayals and dark secrets that shape the world we live in. Because somewhere, even now, another truth is waiting to be exposed.